guys, good to see you all. Honestly, I have had the busiest week. It's just been crazy. I'm away to my friend Tamira's house for a bit of a chill out and a catch up. Hey Tamira, how are you?
I'm good, Miriam. What about yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. I've had the most manic week. It's been crazy. I'm so ready for a chill out.
I got some coffees from Camel's down the road, the new place.
Did you? Oh, thanks so much, Tamira. Look at that. Oh, amazing. Thank you.
No problem.
Did you see the story about some Ephesians burning magic scrolls?
Yeah, who even knows what went on there? Mad. You wouldn't have any of that nonsense happening in Caesarea?
What are you reading about, Tamira?
Oh, just the politics section. I'm sure you've heard the news about our new governor, Festus.
Yeah, of course. Who hasn't? To be honest, I was ready for the change. If you ask me, the old governor, Felix, wasn't to be trusted. Him and that wife of his seemed more concerned with lining their own pockets with gold than actually governing the region.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. You know what the Jewish leaders are like, though? They were always on Felix's case, trying to get him to listen to their Jewish laws and support their schemes, or even imprison people.
Don't I know it? Mark my words, they'll take any chance they can get to further their own agenda with this new governor. Festus better watch out if he wants to stay in their favour. Plus, speaking of staying in people's favour, did you hear King Agrippa has come to Caesarea to visit his new governor? It's all happening here.
Of course I did. In fact, it sounds like the king has actually been taking quite an interest in Festus' affairs of state. Did you hear that he asked to meet one of the prisoners himself? You remember Paul?
Paul? Wasn't he in prison 2 years ago during Felix's reign? Seems a bit odd to have a trial 2 years after he was arrested. Better late than never, I suppose.
Tell me about it. Well, Paul's trial was unresolved, so Festus was going to take him to Jerusalem. But Paul petitioned Festus to send him to Caesar instead. So he's actually going to face a bigger trial in front of Caesar to decide his fate.
To Caesar? Whoa, that's big.
Isn't it? But before he goes to Caesar, King Agrippa wanted to hear what Paul has to say.
Really? It's not like King Agrippa to take such an interest in a prisoner.
Yeah, I know. But this is no ordinary prisoner. Honestly, you should hear the things he has said to King Agrippa.
Tamira, I don't get involved in all that legal and religious stuff. Can we move on? I hear the business section has an exclusive interview with Kamel about his new coffee company. I want to hear his story of how he started his business. Did you know he used to be a blacksmith, but now he has totally changed his life to pursue his own coffee business? Kamel is such an inspiration.
No, seriously, Miriam. Paul's meeting with Festus and King Agrippa wasn't a boring religious or legal meeting at all. Paul spent the entire time telling the king his life story, and it was really interesting hearing about his personal experiences. He actually spoke of when and how he encountered Jesus, and how Jesus completely changed his life. It actually helped me understand the appeal of this Jesus guy that people keep talking about. Look, read it for yourself.
This guy really did used to be a religious hotshot, didn't he? He was one of the Pharisees. You don't often see one of them in prison.
Yeah, He used to be famous for persecuting Christians, but meeting Jesus really did seem to change everything for him, didn't it?
Yeah. It says here that he's now devoted his life to telling both Jews and Gentiles about Jesus. Huh. Maybe I do want to hear his story after all. Well, hi again everybody. Welcome back to another week of Sunday Stories for Families. We're going to read the true story in the Bible that the drama we just watched was based on, and then we're going to sing a song, and then we're going to dig a bit deeper into the Bible story. Do you remember that we heard during our drama that Paul told Festus and King Agrippa his personal story of meeting Jesus? Well, we're going to read a bit of Paul's story told in his own words now from Acts, chapter 26, verse 12 to 20. Why not pause your video, grab your Bible and read along with me. So that's Acts chapter 26, verse 12 to 20. I'm going to read it from my page. One time, the leading priests gave me permission and the power to go to Damascus. On the way there, at noon, I saw a light from heaven. The light was brighter than the sun. It flashed all around me and the men who were travelling with me. We all fell to the ground. Then I heard a voice speaking to me in the Jewish language. The voice said, "Saul, Saul, why are you doing things against me? You are only hurting yourself by fighting me." I said, "Who are you, Lord?" The Lord said, "I am Jesus. I am the one you are trying to hurt. Stand up. I have chosen you to be my servant. You will be my witness. You will tell people the things that you have seen and the things that I will show you. This is why I have come to you today. I will not let your own people hurt you, and I will keep you safe from the non-Jewish people too. These are the people I am sending you to. I send you to open their eyes that they may turn away from darkness to the light. I send you that they may turn away from the power of Satan and turn to God. Then their sins can be forgiven and they can have a place with those people who have been made holy by believing in me." King Agrippa, after I had this vision from heaven, I obeyed it. I began telling people that they should change their hearts and lives and turn to God. I told them to do things to show that they really had changed. I told this first to those in Damascus, then in Jerusalem, and then in every part of Judea, and also to the non-Jewish people.
Hi everyone, my name's Liv and we're going to sing a song together about our holy God who welcomes us in as friends when we trust in Jesus. This is a call and response song, but I don't have anyone here to help me, so when I sing a line, you're going to sing it back to me really loudly. Are you ready? God is a holy God. God is a holy... Where did that come from? Oh, hi Alana.
Hi, Liv.
Great to have you here.
I thought I'd just pop in and help with the call and response.
Awesome, thanks. Well everyone, follow Alana. God is a holy God. God is a holy God. We can't be friends because of our sin. We can't be friends because of our sin. God is a holy God. God is a holy God. We
again.
That was an interesting drama, wasn't it? I wasn't aware they had coffee and magazines back in the 1st century. Well, in our drama, Miriam didn't seem particularly interested in Paul at first, did she? She didn't really get Paul. He didn't make much sense to her. So she wanted to read about the people she could actually relate to. But did you notice that as Tamara told Miriam about Paul's story, she became far more interested in him. As she heard Paul's life story, he began to make more sense to her. And as Miriam began to understand Paul, she began to understand what he was saying about how Jesus changed his life. And that made her want to hear more. Stories are important to us, aren't they? They help us to relate to and make sense of people. And in our true story from the Bible today, we see Paul use his personal story of his encounter with Jesus to explain why he called himself a Christian. Last week, we heard that Paul has spent the past 2 years in prison after being arrested unfairly due to the Jewish leaders. But despite this, Paul continued to share the good news about Jesus with Governor Felix and his wife. Well, this week, our story begins with a change of leadership. Governor Felix has been replaced with a new governor called Festus. And as soon as Festus became governor, the Jewish leaders were up to their old tricks. They wanted him to bring Paul to Jerusalem to hold a trial, 2 whole years after he was arrested and imprisoned. But on his way to Jerusalem, the Jewish leaders planned to kill Paul. Well, instead, Festus decided they would hold the trial in Caesarea, where Paul was imprisoned. So I want you to picture the scene. We're in Caesarea and Paul is standing before the court. And it becomes pretty clear pretty quickly that the Jewish leaders didn't have any real charges against Paul. He hadn't done anything that deserved imprisonment or death. The Jewish leaders had no evidence to support their claims about Paul. If Paul was innocent, what do you think Governor Festus should have done next? He should have let Paul go free. But instead of declaring Paul innocent, Governor Festus asked Paul to go to Jerusalem, just like the Jewish leaders wanted. You see, the Jewish leaders had hated Felix, the previous governor, and Festus did not want to get on their bad side. Paul knew that going to Jerusalem would be very dangerous, so he only had one option. He had to appeal to Caesar, who was the emperor, the big guy in charge of the whole Roman Empire. If Paul appealed to Caesar, he would stand trial in front of him instead of going to Jerusalem. So Paul had escaped death by the skin of his teeth. And Paul was going to stand trial in front of Caesar. But before Paul could go to Jerusalem, someone else came to visit. I wonder if you can remember his name from the drama. His name was King Agrippa II, and he came to Caesarea to visit his new governor, Festus. But while he was there, he took the opportunity to hear what Paul had to say. To King Agrippa, Paul didn't make much sense. He used to be a Pharisee, but was now in prison claiming to be a Christian. King Agrippa did not understand Paul. So, I want you to picture a courtroom once again. And in that courtroom, we have our 3 main players. We have Paul, we have Governor Festus, and we have King Agrippa II. And as the court begins, King Agrippa stands up and says to Paul, "You may now defend yourself." And as we would expect, Paul bravely stands up to tell them the good news about Jesus. But this time, Paul chooses to tell them about Jesus by telling them his life story. Instead of defending himself, Paul takes them back to the time when he used to be a strict law-keeping Pharisee. And he reminded them of all the things he had done, including imprisoning or even killing Christians to try to stop the church from growing. But then he met Jesus on the Damascus road as he saw a blinding light, and he realised that Jesus was the promised king. That changed everything for Paul. After that, Paul stopped persecuting Christians and started telling people the good news about Jesus. Instead of wanting to destroy the church, he wanted it to grow. Why don't you read along with me what Paul said next? Can you find Acts chapter 26, verse 19 to 20 in your Bible? Paul said, "King Agrippa, after I had this vision from heaven, I obeyed it. I began telling people that they should change their hearts and lives and turn to God. I told them to do things to show that they really had changed. I told this first to those in Damascus, then in Jerusalem, and in every part of Judea, and also to the non-Jewish people." Paul was explaining that his life was completely transformed when he realised that Jesus was God's promised king, and that Jesus had commanded Paul to tell everyone about him. Paul bravely shared the good news about Jesus with Governor Festus and King Agrippa and the rest of the courtroom. But he did so by telling his story, his encounter with King Jesus. Well, we've seen over the past few weeks that Paul faithfully told people about Jesus over and over again. And he did so in lots of different ways, didn't he? He told them about Jesus' life on earth, his death on the cross, and how we could see God's handiwork in the world around us. And just like Paul, we've been thinking about how we might tell our friends about Jesus. And those are all brilliant ways to share the gospel. But have you ever thought that one of the ways in which we can tell our friends about Jesus is by telling them our stories, how we came to have a relationship with Jesus? That's a brilliant way to talk to your friends about Jesus. King Agrippa thought Paul made no sense. Here was a man who used to be a Pharisee. He was the one responsible for putting Christians in prison. Yet now he was in prison, claiming to be a Christian himself. But Paul told the king his story so that the king would understand how Jesus had changed his life. We might not have a story quite like Paul's. I don't know about you, but I haven't seen any blinding lights from heaven when I've been out for a walk. Or maybe, unlike Paul, we can't remember an exact time that our lives were changed by Jesus. Maybe we've known and loved Jesus for as long as we can remember. That's the case with me. I don't remember a time when I wasn't a Christian. But I still have a story to tell, and so do you. I have a relationship with Jesus. I can talk to him about whatever I'm thinking or feeling, and I can ask him for his help when I pray. And I can listen to him as he talks to me in his word, the Bible. And I can think of lots of times when I was particularly conscious of his help or guidance, or the comfort that knowing him brought when I was scared or didn't know what to do. And you have a relationship with Jesus too. Maybe when you've tried to talk to your friends about Jesus, they haven't been very interested. Maybe they think, he seems pretty old or irrelevant or uninteresting. Or maybe you're worried that you don't know your Bible well enough and just won't know what to say. But your friends think that you're interesting. They want to hear about your life. And as you tell your friends about your story, your relationship with Jesus, it can be a brilliant way to tell them the good news of the gospel. Why you think Jesus is so worth their time. Well, thanks so much for listening, guys. As usual, there'll be questions down below if you want to dig a bit deeper. If you're trusting in Jesus, you absolutely have a story worth telling. So why not pray that Jesus would help you to tell others about your relationship with him? Bye, guys.